the election ads
I've spent my life keeping Florida safe.
Warning signs can be hard to spot.
are everywhere.
Amendment 3.
They're not for politicians,
This is Amendment 4.
but how Floridians can amend the state constitution.
I like it. I think it's a good move.
It's a scam. It's a trick.
Absolutely, positively not.
There are 6 constitutional amendments on the 2024 ballot in Florida.
I'm voting no on Amendment 4.
What are they? Who's behind them?
To have an opportunity to take something directly to the voters is really sacred.
How will they impact the Sunshine State? WESH 2 examines what this year's ballot amendments are all about. This is a Commitment 2024 special, explaining the amendments.
Hello, I'm Michelle Imparato. With Election Day a few weeks away and early voting already happening, it's time for all of us to decide how we'll be voting. This program isn't focused on people. We're tackling the topics laid out as constitutional amendments on the ballot. This year, 2 of those amendments are getting the bulk of the attention, especially as TV commercials: abortion and recreational marijuana. We start with Amendment 3. It looks to legalize the use of recreational marijuana. The issue is pitting doctors, law enforcement, the governor, and big business against each other. Greg Fox weeds through what the amendment would do with pot in the Sunshine State.
Weed, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it. The future of marijuana in Florida is on the ballot, and you will have the power to decide if recreational marijuana is legal. As natural as the cannabis plant itself, voters, naturally, have strong opinions for it.
It's no worse than drinking alcohol.
Against it.
It's a gateway drug.
And still others are unsure.
What are you trying to pass, or what are we trying to pass? Because I don't know.
Great questions. Here's how your ballot reads. Amendment 3 allows adults 21 years or older to possess, purchase, or use marijuana products and marijuana accessories for non-medical personal consumption by smoking, ingestion, or otherwise. Allows medical marijuana treatment centers and other state-licensed entities to acquire, cultivate, process, manufacture, sell, and distribute such products and accessories. The full language of the amendment says a person could legally possess up to 3 ounces. What it does not authorize is homegrown cannabis, but lawmakers could address that and the question of where in public you can smoke or vape. The amendment's language was green-lighted by the conservative Supreme Court of Florida, made up mostly of justices appointed by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, who is not happy about it.
How the Florida Supreme Court let that summary on was a huge mistake and a bad decision.
DeSantis is actively fighting legalized pot with a political committee formed by his chief of staff to finance the Vote No on 3 campaign. It's airing ads that claim the amendment was made to line the pockets of corporate cannabis.
You got to buy it from them. So they're creating in our Constitution a big weed cartel.
Trulieve, the largest medical marijuana producer and seller, launched and mostly funded the Amendment 3 campaign. Other companies have since joined, raising nearly $100 million to try and pass it.
Amendment 3 allows responsible adults to buy safe, regulated, lab-tested marijuana.
Smart and Safe Florida is the committee airing Yes on 3 ads. And Trulieve CEO Kim Rivers argues Amendment 3 is needed to ensure a safe, regulated product that is not sold on the streets.
Having a responsible industry that can be taxed and regulated and that's bringing, again, safe, tested product to market for a variety of reasons makes a whole lot of sense.
The industry is predicting recreational marijuana will create 60,000 jobs with an annual revenue of $6 billion. A state study estimates the financial impact this way. Annual sales tax revenue of $196 to $431 million. That would be offset by initial startup regulatory costs of $20 million and annual regulatory cost of $11 million thereafter. But the governor, with the support of law enforcement, claims recreational marijuana will not slow the black market, one that they believe includes the illegal sale of marijuana laced with fentanyl, meth, and other dangerous drugs.
California has a big black market, and so it's actually led to way more drugs. It's led to more dangerous drugs coming in. It's ridiculous. So this isn't going to be good. It's not going to be good for law and order.
In fact, several studies have shown that in Colorado, quote, illicit marijuana grows with legalization. And because recreational weed is taxed, quote, excessive taxation can influence consumers' decisions to patronize the black market.
If you ask me on Amendment 3, absolutely positively not.
Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood says his fear is that drug treatment centers won't be able to handle a landslide of cannabis users who will develop other addictions. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention raises concerns about cannabis use disorder and that users have a 10% likelihood of becoming addicted.
We are in the throes of an opioid crisis where doctors wrote prescriptions for opioids like they were handing out Tic Tacs. And now we want to turn around and unleash another monster.
Why do you drive around smoking, you know?
Police are also worried that recreational marijuana could cause a spike in impaired driving. We know drunk driving can kill.
Yes.
Can driving while high kill?
Yes. But if your normal faculties are impaired to operate a motor vehicle, you will be arrested for DUI.
You are putting other people's lives at risk.
Paula Cobb lives with the painful reality that drivers who are high can kill. This crash near UCF in 2019 violently ended the life of her daughter, London Harrell.
Say no rocking chair.
The driver, Yusuf Hassan, failed field sobriety tests, had cannabis in his system, was convicted, and sent to prison. Paula says the loss of her daughter should be a warning to every voter when it comes to Amendment 3.
A wonderful, talented young person who was so giving to this world was taken away from us.
According to the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, from 2019 through 2023, there were more than 7,100 drug-related crashes. About 2,400 involved marijuana. Those crashes killed nearly 1,900 people and injured more than 2,000 others. Unlike alcohol impairment, which can be detected with breathalyzers, law enforcement in Florida must rely on field sobriety tests or urine tests to try and detect the presence of cannabis. Problem is, the National Institutes of Health concluded cannabis can be detected in body fluids for days or even weeks after intoxication.
As you wrap it, it gives you kind of like an extra buzz.
We traveled to Maryland to see how police there pay people to get high,
take 9 heel-to-toe steps forward,
and submit to sobriety testing so they can get real-world training on the effects of marijuana impairment. Florida has no such training, despite the fact that voters approved medical marijuana in 2016. No surprise that the medical marijuana industry is pouring millions into the campaign to get you to vote yes on Amendment 3. Right now, there are 885,000 medical marijuana patients. They have to see a doctor every 7 months to get their prescriptions renewed. And you may be wondering, what happens to that if recreational marijuana passes?
It's rare the individual that says, oh, I just want to smoke weed all day, get high, and play video games and eat Doritos. That's not the reality.
Dr. Joseph Rosado is a medical marijuana physician with DocMJ. He's concerned that if recreational cannabis passes, some patients may believe they can self-medicate without a doctor's guidance, which he believes would be a big mistake.
Using cannabis in conjunction with a host of other regularly prescribed medications, can that be dangerous?
That can be dangerous. That interaction, that simultaneous use can cause a drug-drug interaction and can lead to issues that only a physician that's certified to recommend cannabis can help.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Madeline Vicente is battling breast cancer and came to Dr. Rosado's office for a medical marijuana prescription to battle nausea and other side effects of chemotherapy.
It lasts 6 to 12 hours in your system.
She's unsure how long her treatment may last and is worried that medical marijuana might disappear if recreational marijuana passes.
That will be concern me because, like, for me, this is the first time I was not aware about a lot of stuff that he told me today in my visit that I learned. You know, it's not a me that you just go and get the marijuana, because if you have medical issues, you need to know exactly what you need for your treatment and what are you putting in your body.
Despite his opposition to Amendment 3, Governor DeSantis recently told WESH 2 News medical marijuana is here to stay.
We have medical. The people have spoken. Anyone that has medical, they're going to continue to have it.
In just 7 years, medical marijuana has grown to be the biggest crop in Florida. If voters say yes to Amendment 3, the recreational marijuana industry will be roughly twice that size by the next presidential election.
Florida must vote yes on 4 to stop the dangerous ban.
Deeply personal.
The warning signs are everywhere. Vote no on Amendment 4.
Highly controversial. WESH 2 looks at the facts of what Amendment 4 will and won't do with abortion in Florida. That's next.
Welcome back to WESH 2's Commitment 2024 Amendment Special. It's one of the most contentious issues of this election, nationally and locally, abortion. After the state of Florida enacted a 6-week abortion ban, pro-choice advocates gathered enough signatures to put an abortion amendment on the ballot. Amendment 4 aims to allow voters to decide if access to an abortion should be guaranteed in Florida. But opponents say it's not that simple. Haley Krumblholm examines each side's argument and what the amendment might do to abortion access in Florida.
You've seen the rallies.
No on board! No on board! No on board!
And the ads.
Florida must vote yes on 4 to stop the dangerous ban. The warning signs are everywhere. Vote no on Amendment 4.
Now, voters are deciding whether women will have a constitutional right to an abortion in Florida. But what would Amendment 4 really do? First, let's look at what you'll see on the ballot. Its title is Amendment to Limit Government Interference with Abortion. It reads, no law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health, as determined by the patient's health care provider. This amendment does not change the legislature's constitutional authority to require notification to a parent or guardian before a minor has an abortion. It's important to know the language of the amendment was approved by Florida Supreme Court, a court filled with conservative justices, all but 2 appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis. Still, the words have the no on 4 camp on the attack.
Everything that sounds like a limitation, like viability, the inclusion of a healthcare provider, and patient's health, those all sound like common sense limitations. But actually, they're completely hollow because there's no definition.
Sarah Johnson is a statewide grassroots director for Vote No on 4 Florida, which argues the amendment is too vague. So let's go back to the language. No law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health, as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. No on 4 takes issue with the terms viability and healthcare provider. It's the same argument they made to the Supreme Court, claiming the lack of definitions made the amendment misleading. But the court ruled none of these things render the summary misleading or inadequate in any way.
Existing Florida law actually already has these definitions.
Natasha Sutherland, a senior advisor to the Yes on 4 campaign, argues that viability and healthcare provider are already defined by state law. Let's start with viability. Section 13 of Florida Statute 390.011 says viable or viability means the stage of fetal development when the life of a fetus is sustainable outside the womb through standard medical measures. It does not include a number of weeks into a pregnancy when viability occurs because it is different for every woman. So, at what point can a fetus survive outside the womb? The United Kingdom's National Health Service says at 24 weeks pregnant, the baby has a chance of survival if they are born. Most babies born before this time cannot live because their lungs and other vital organs are not developed enough. No on 4 also raises concerns about the term patient's healthcare provider.
It's a scam. It's a trick. Women deserve health care. Women deserve doctors.
No on 4 argues the amendment means someone who isn't a doctor could perform abortions. Currently, only licensed physicians can perform abortions in Florida. According to a 6-year study from the University of California published in 2013, first trimester abortions are just as safe when performed by trained nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and certified nurse midwives as when conducted by physicians. Possibly the biggest argument the No on 4 folks have with Amendment 4 is the last line on the ballot. This amendment does not change the legislature's constitutional authority to require notification to a parent or guardian before a minor has an abortion. Parental notification is required in the state constitution. Consent is only required under state law.
We consulted with the attorneys here at our campaign, and that's exactly what they told us, is that the only thing that it will do is stop the extreme 6-week abortion ban. And so it's not going to do anything with consent, and it's not going to change anything with notification.
Right now in Florida, for anyone under 18 seeking an abortion, the doctor must ask for and a parent has to provide a signed and notarized document consenting to the abortion. So would that change under Amendment 4? We spoke with constitutional law experts who told us they're not sure, and ultimately that part could be decided by the courts.
When the amendment says notification, that implies that it doesn't require, and the legislature cannot require consent. The person on the other side would say it requires notification, but it doesn't say the legislature can't require consent. Those will be the arguments. I can't tell you today how the Supreme Court would decide it.
Not detailed in the amendment are the exceptions for abortion in Florida. Current state law has an exception for rape or incest up to 15 weeks of pregnancy, but it requires documentation, like a police report or restraining order. Things Yes on 4 argues make it harder for women to find a doctor and get an abortion. Current law also has exceptions to protect a woman's life or in the event of a fatal fetal abnormality. But again, it requires documentation, with 2 physicians certifying the need for an abortion in writing. Violating the requirements means a doctor could be arrested and face felony charges. The authors of Amendment 4 say it would eliminate what they consider barriers in the current exceptions.
It's written exactly as it needs to be written for us to go back to how things were before the fall of Roe. It's written exactly as it needs to be written so that every individual pregnancy, every individual woman is able to get the health care that they need and that they deserve.
You know, if the amendment said what it did, Floridians wouldn't vote for it. That's why the sponsors wrote it, to make it sound reasonable, but it's not.
There's something else on the ballot that you'll want to understand. It's the amendment's financial impact statement. The state conducts this for every amendment. For Amendment 4, it's not clear what the costs of the amendment could be. The study could not determine if public funding would be used for abortions and the cost of possible litigation related to the amendment. The Vote No on 4 Florida campaign supports the impact statement.
The financial impact statement pointed out a lot of those discrepancies for voters to know what they're actually voting on when they check yes or no.
But the Yes on 4 campaign warns the statement is purely political.
It's just another example of political interference. It's not particularly helpful or informative. These are just individuals, you know, at the top in charge. They're looking to rig the system, really to the detriment of everyday Floridians.
For all the ads and the parsing of words and terms, access to abortion health care is a deeply personal issue. How you vote on this amendment will impact a woman's right to have an abortion in Florida.
4 more amendments are up for vote on this year's Florida ballot. Get the facts about Amendments 1, 2, 5, and 6. Next.
Amendments 3 and 4 have definitely received the bulk of the attention this election cycle. But the 4 other amendments on the ballot are important, and it's important that you know what you're voting on. They impact your taxes, how tax dollars are used, wildlife in Florida, even future local elections. Here's a look at each. Amendment 1 is the Partisan School Board Elections Amendment. This amendment would make school board elections partisan beginning in 2026. Simply put, do you want to know which political party your school board candidates are registered with? Right now, the law requires school board elections to be nonpartisan, so you don't see any party labels like Democrat or Republican. If you vote no on Amendment 1, it will stay that way. If you vote yes on Amendment 1, starting in 2026, school board candidates would go through partisan primaries and be listed on the ballot with their party affiliation. Amendment 2 on this year's ballot is the Right to Hunt and Fish Amendment. This measure would make it a constitutional right to hunt and fish in the state of Florida, and it would declare that hunting and fishing are the preferred methods of responsibly managing and controlling fish and wildlife. That means if the state deems a population of an animal like deer or bears needs to be controlled, a public hunt could be authorized. The amendment does not limit the authority granted to the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission under Section 9 of Article 4 of the state constitution. If you vote yes, you are in favor of forever preserving hunting and fishing as a public right. If you vote no, you oppose establishing that right in the Constitution. Now let's take a look at Amendment 5. Homeowners should pay close attention to this one. Amendment 5 would tie the homestead exemption to the rate of inflation. If you own a home in Florida, you're eligible for 2 separate homestead exemptions that reduce the taxable value of your property. They're $25,000 each. Amendment 5 states that one of those exemptions would increase if inflation goes up. So instead of $25,000, it might be worth $26,000 or $27,000, depending on how much the Consumer Price Index rises. And in years where inflation drops, the exemption could drop back to $25,000, but by law, it can never drop below $25,000. A yes vote approves the inflation rate increase. A no vote keeps the exemption in question at $25,000. And finally, Amendment 6 is the repeal of public financing for statewide campaigns. This amendment would repeal one passed in 1998 that allows candidates for 4 statewide offices to get public financing for their campaigns. That money comes from the State General Revenue Fund. Financing is available for candidates running for governor and attorney general, chief financial officer, and commissioner of agriculture if they qualify. The qualifications include candidates must have an opponent, they must agree to spending limits, and report campaign financing data to the Division of Elections. After the election, they must submit to an audit. A yes vote for Amendment 6 would repeal the law and eliminate public campaign financing. If you vote no, the law will stay as is. This amendment was also on the 2010 ballot and failed. Every amendment must receive 60% of the vote in order to pass. You can find all of the stories we've reported on the 6 ballot amendments online right now. Head to WESH.com and look for the Commitment 2024 tab. Early voting lasts until November 2nd in most counties. Your last chance to make your vote count is Election Day, November 5th. Thanks for watching.